So let's start with the actual topic itself, the rulings about masjids, the do's and don'ts that we find in the hadith and verses of Quran and so on. So now from this point onwards, it's all going to be about the fiqh related aspect of a masjid. What is allowed, what is not allowed, what's recommended, and so on. So and this topic is particularly important for those who are volunteers of the masjid, those who come regularly to the masjid, and also those who are in the management, because sometimes you have to take decisions on behalf of the community. And you should know these basic things, the basic knowledge. Otherwise, we will not be able to run it properly or according to the commandments of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So I have about 40 or so issues that I want to discuss. I've just broke it down in each and every slide. I want to talk about issue number 1. So starting before even building the masjid, if a group of brothers get together and they say, hey, why don't we start a masjid? And they say, okay, it's a very good idea, but we don't have money, so what should we do? Okay, we know what we can do is we just apply for a loan, just like many people do. They buy a house, and some people buy a house on interest and riba-based loans. Now, can we buy a masjid with a riba-based loan? So obviously it's not on one person, it's for the whole community, but it's a need. So people will say, now we have our society, our community has a need. Is that a valid excuse for us to take a riba-based loan? The answer is no, you cannot. You simply cannot take a riba-based loan. That's it. And one who does that, he must repent to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But just for the talk, just let's say that there is one masjid and they openly say that yes, we took riba-based loan. They openly say it in front of everybody. Is it permissible for us to go in that masjid and pray? That's a question. So the scholars talked about it, and they say that it is permissible in such a masjid to pray in such a masjid. It's okay, but the burden of the sin lies on the management who takes such decisions. So that's the reason. These things I want you to be aware of, because you will be involved one day or the other into these decisions. And if the management, for example, is taking such decisions, you can raise your voice and say that, I have this and that, I have heard from these scholars and so on, and these are the fatwas that we can use, and so on. So basic things here is that, masjid is not just about coming here and praying and going back home. We have to take part in other activities of the masjid itself, talking to others about how the masjid is structured, how it's built, and what's the foundation, and so on. So even this aspect as well. Now, the other thing is that, can we use the money that was donated from haram wealth? Now, there are different kinds of haram wealth. Like this brother who, for example, just for the example, says, I want to do something good, and I want you to use that money and build a masjid so that I will get some rewards. So, is that permissible? Can we take that money? The answer is absolutely not. So if the basic rule here is that if the wealth was taken wrongfully, unlawful means, then there's no way masjid can accept that money. You have to return it to the rightful owners. If you come to know about it, you should ask the brother, or you yourself should return the money to the rightful owners. And the other part of it is that, imagine like a brother who went to, for example, Las Vegas, and he did gamble, and he earned a lot of money from that gambling, and he comes back and he says, brothers approach him and say, oh brother, gambling is haram, you should not be using this money. So he realizes his mistake. So the brothers suggest him that you should donate the money, you shouldn't use it for yourself. Now, can this brother donate all his gambled money, earned money from gambling, to the masjid? And as a masjid volunteer or as the masjid management, can you accept such money? So there are a lot of fatwas about it. like Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah rahmatullah alayhi, Imam al-Ghazali, and Shaykh Ibn Uthaymeen rahmatullah alayhi, they said that if the money is earned in a haram way, if a person donates this in charity to the masjid, the person will not get any reward for it. Okay, he will not get any reward for it. However, it is permissible for the masjid to use the money. And basically, when somebody gives a gift or a sadaqah, so there is a financial transaction involved here. So it's a gift is a form of financial transactions, and whenever a transaction is involved, the nature of money changes. So it was a gambled money, and now it's a gifted money. So now because of this switch, the nature of money has changed, and that's why it becomes permissible for a person to take that money. Now, same thing if I run a grocery store, and my customer comes to me and says, this is $100 that I won from lottery, take this money and give me some groceries. Can we accept that money? Yeah, well, we don't really care where he gets that money. Now, because of that financial transaction, the nature of money has changed. Similarly, that's non-financial transaction is form of gift or sadaqah, the nature changes and it is acceptable. Now, the whole concept here that we should remember is Allah is pure and He accepts only that which is pure. Okay, Allah is pure and He accepts only that which is pure, and that's the reason why a person should not expect any rewards from. You had a question, brother?
How come the masjid can take donations from money that you got from a casino, but not from somebody who robbed somebody else?
Because the principle here is that if money belongs to somebody else, it's not yours, and there is an owner of that money, and that owner, without his permission, you took the money, right? When you go to gambling, the gambler or whatever that casino is, he willfully gives you the money. Okay, you won the money. Okay, so you didn't steal it from somebody. So in both the cases, he is committing haram. But in terms of like for example, if you have haram money, if you have money from interest or whatever, you cannot use it. What are you going to do with that money? Just bury it or burn it? No, you have to donate it charity purposes. That's what he should be doing. Now, that charity, is it permissible for a masjid? The scholars say yes, you can take it, but of course I'm going to tell you that some scholars do not like that decision, that fatwa. So you will find difference of opinion, but I mentioned or quoted to you the scholars who said it was okay. So now another question is, where should the masjid be built? Where should the masjid be built? Do we have any recommendation from the hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam? Now there is a hadith in Tirmidhi, which is a Sahih hadith, and Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam he commanded that mosques be built among houses and they be cleaned and perfumed. So basically here the ruling is that it should be built among the houses. So if you, for example, if you have enough money and if you want to construct a masjid or build a masjid, the number one thing that you should look is that this masjid should be at a place where people live, where there are residents, where there are houses. So it shouldn't be like at the outskirts of the people where nobody can go. The whole point is that it should be easy for people to come to the masjid. You might say, okay, it's a very cheap plan, I'm going to build a masjid and I'll get a lot of rewards. But the hadith here is very clear that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam commanded that the mosques be built among houses, right, where there are houses. Yeah, there are of course some other reasons, like sometimes in a marketplace you will find the need for masajid because there are a lot of shops and people need to pray. So those are, those are fine, and there are some people also open musallas instead of masjids. That's fine too. But the whole idea of a masjid is that it should be among the houses of the people, and that's how even if you look in the early days, during the time of Khulafa and everybody, what they used to do, if they want to establish a city, what they would do is the center of the city would be what? Would be the masjid, and around it would be what? The houses, and at the very outside of everything of the city is going to be the marketplace. That's how the traditional city structure would be. That's how the Islamic structure was. So markets would be outside the residential area, and it would be like the outer circle. Yeah. Question, brother?
What's the difference between a masjid and a musalla?
Masjid and a musalla. So you were not here, I guess, when we were in the first session. But the basic difference here is that, number one, masjid is a house of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It is not owned by a person. Masjid belongs to Allah. When in musalla, you can buy one property and keep it on your name, and you can tell people that you can come and pray, use it as a place of worship, but it is not a masjid. Okay, for a masjid, there cannot be any owner of a masjid. For a musalla, there can be. And there are a lot of rulings. All these discussions that we are doing, it's all about masjid. So if somebody wants to do something for a masjid, and I mentioned that it's not allowed, so that doesn't apply to musalla. Okay, for example, buying and selling in a masjid here, I cannot sell you something, but in musalla you can do it. Okay, and also i'tikaf, for example, we can do i'tikaf in masjid, right? But in musalla we cannot do, because i'tikaf is only for masjid. So these are the differences. Another issue that we face very often here in America is the issue of church. So, alhamdulillah, our Muslim population in this country keeps on increasing by the grace of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and we see often that the religion, in other religions, people are shrinking, or they are selling their places of worship. You find churches, you find synagogues, people are selling them, and Muslims are buying it, alhamdulillah. And that's easy to do, by the way, in terms of the licensing and all the restrictions from the government. You just buy a church, and it's very easy. So now the question that is asked is, can we convert a church into a masjid? Is it really permissible in Islam? The answer is definitely yes, it is permissible. But however, the scholars mentioned about it, and they said that you have to do few things before you do that. That is, first thing, you must make sure you remove all images and statues and pictures from that church. You have to either remove it or paint it or do something so that you cannot see it. You cannot have any statue or any image in there. And there are many hadith that I can quote, but I'll just quote one in Tirmidhi, a Sahih hadith, wherein, the famous story, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he mentioned that Jibril alayhi salam, he came to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and he returned. He didn't enter the house. And, for many days that happened. In this hadith, it mentioned about the previous night. And the reason that he said later on to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, I did not enter because I saw a statue at the doorstep, by the door of the house, and I also saw an image on the curtain hanging, and also that there was a dog which was placed by Hassan and Hussein under the table. So he told Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam that you should cut the heads of the statues so that they are like a tree, and you should take off the curtain and use it in, for example, like a pillow, a cushion, or something like that, and under the floor, placed on the floor. So basically the point here is same, that these images and these statues and engravings, these should be out of place of worship, because angels, as we mentioned, like right now, this is halaqah, we are surrounded by angels. It's only that we cannot see them, but that's why it becomes a blessed gathering. So if we have image here, statues here, you won't find the angels of mercy around here. So that's the reason. Now, can we convert an evil place into a masjid? So you see a nightclub or a bar or a place where they were selling alcohol and they were out of business, and they are, for example, maybe selling very, very cheap. And we as Muslim community, we probably don't have millions of dollars or thousands of dollars. We just have few money, and a community really needs masjid. Can we buy such a place? They are going out of business. The scholars discussed about it, and they said that it is permissible to buy such a place. And some people would say, oh, why? How do you say it's permissible? Don't you know that it was such a bad place. How can you say it is permissible? So the scholars mentioned that, what was bad was the action that was taking place inside that place, right? The place itself doesn't go bad, right? The place itself doesn't go bad. It's everything is it belongs to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, okay? Location itself is not bad. It's the action that is done in that place that makes that action bad, all right? So another related issue is, can we rent a church? Alhamdulillah, our community is growing, and sometimes to accommodate all people, everybody, we do not have enough space in the masjid, so we need another space, for example, in Eid time or some event or some function. Is it permissible to rent a church? The scholars also discussed about it, and they said that this should be the last resort. If you tried all options, nothing is working out, you're not getting any room, any university place, you're not getting any fire station place to rent or anything. There are a lot of places, a lot of stores that people give for renting. If nothing is possible, then they said that it is okay, but only if it becomes a necessity, and praying them in it is permissible. But however, they again mention, now you go to this church and you start praying, what are you going to do about statues and engravings there? Are you just going to pray like that? The scholars mentioned that if it is in the direction of Qibla, you have to do something. You just can't pray like that. You have to cover it with something, or hide it or conceal it somehow. But you definitely should not be praying that way if it's in the direction of Qibla. Can a masjid have women's section? Is it recommended? Is it okay? Or what's the ruling? Do we have any evidences from Quran and Sunnah? Now, definitely, obviously, we have sisters here and we have a women's section. It is definitely permitted. And if it is permitted, how should their where should their location be? So the best thing is that the women's section should be behind the men's section. That's how during the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was. Women used to come to the masjid and they had their section at the back of the men's section. Okay, and this is really recommended, especially in this country, that women should come to the masajid and learn Islamic knowledge, and that's the best place to learn Islamic knowledge. And however, there are a few things, especially if you're in the management or if you want to be in the management, you should know that a section of the woman is not an isolated place. Okay, so many scholars were saying that women should be able to see the imam. That's the best thing. They can see the imam. That's the best thing. Or the very least, they should be able to hear the imam with some instrument like loudspeaker or something like that. If they are completely disconnected, then there's a problem. So that section is not properly created. Okay, and what about the partition of women? Do we need to have it? Is it compulsory, or is it better, or what? During the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, was there any partition between men and women? There was no partition at that time, and the scholars discussed this, and they said that it is better if women's area have partition. Why? Because they said that it gives more privacy to the sisters, right? Some sisters might feel uncomfortable. They have, maybe there's like a Muslim who is not practicing and he doesn't know all the rules, he doesn't know the verses about lowering the gaze, so he might start looking at the woman and she would feel uncomfortable. So some women do prefer this, and it's also, it can become a distraction for men and for women to be, seeing people like this of opposite gender. Okay, and some scholars were very strict about it, like Sheikh Ibn Uthaymeen rahmatullah alayhi, and he said that you should definitely have a partition. And his position was that during the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Sahaba's faith, their taqwa was very strong, so they didn't really worry about lowering the gaze and getting uncomfortable. They knew that Sahaba would not even dare to look at a woman like that. And obviously, second thing, he said that Sahaba, they barely constructed a masjid. You know what the roof was made of, right? during the time of Rasulullah. So creating all this partition and everything would add a lot of difficulty for them in terms of finances. So they just did not have partition. But it's overall, it's something better to have. The salah would be valid even without partition. Obviously, we see from the seerah of Rasulullah sallallahu, but it is better to have a partition for women. I think I've seen some masajid, mashallah, when they build a masjid, they put a lot of thought into this. They gave a lot of importance to the sisters, and they have like a kind of a glass wall where only women can see men. Men cannot see women. It's a one-sided glass. So these are the things that you should keep in mind, especially if you're establishing a masjid. Don't be like so focused that, okay, masjid is only for men. We'll just give some, a small room and dump all the sisters there. No, we give a lot of importance. We should give a lot of importance to sisters. Yes, it's true that they do not have to come for Friday prayers, but the role of women is much more than prayers. They need to learn Islam, and because they are the ones who will be nurturing the family, your children, and so on. And also, can a masjid be used as a multi-purpose center? Is it okay to use a masjid as a multi-purpose center? Like most of the masajid, they are calling themselves Islamic center. Right? So it's more than a masjid, more than a place of worship. Is it okay to do that? For example, can you have like a basketball court? Can you have like a shop in there for selling books or something, and things like that? So if we look at the seerah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that Masjid al-Nabawi, that was not just a masjid. It was much more than that. It was a place where Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam would conduct the halaqa, right, the Islamic knowledge. He would give sermons, he would teach people, just like we are establishing the halaqa here. There would be a lot of halaqas during his time. And also, it was a community center. Right? It was also used like a court. A lot of judgments, people would come with their issues, and he would say, no, you cannot do this, you cannot do that. He would enforce such rulings on people that this cannot be done and should not be done. And it was also like a hotel during his time. People would come and sleep there, especially if you're a traveler. They would just, grab a corner and sleep there. So that was it was a multi-purpose center. That's what it was during the time. So we can extend that even to our times, and that's the reason it's not just a place of worship. I've seen some people, I haven't seen, but you must have definitely heard about these people, that when it comes to activities which are not related to praying, they are strictly against it. So they have just one-sided view, and they say that, no, we should only keep masjids for prayers, don't allow any other activities. Why do we have this extra, the youth activities, they are doing this and that. So that's not how our, Islam is. If you look in the history, it should be used for many activities, multi-purpose activities. Like eating food also, like that's what we do here, right? So eating food, as we'll discuss later, inshallah, this is fine. And also, can we pay wages to imam and muazzin? We discussed this many times before, and many scholars also discussed about this in the Council of Senior Scholars of Saudi Arabia and the fatwas that were published, and they were clear that it is permissible to give wages to imam and muazzin, obviously because he is serving time, he has to feed his families, and we need a dedicated person, and so that's why it makes sense to give them this wages. So it is not haram. So people cannot say, oh, you should do everything for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, this is haram money, you cannot take. So this is not valid claim. They deserve it, deserve to get the money. And they also mention about insurance on masjid property, that it should be a halal insurance. We should not indulge in any haram financial contracts as well, right? And now other issue that people often ask is, can a masjid be part of a building? For example, I have a masjid established now, right? So like in this masjid, right? So what I'll do is, I think that masjid needs money. All right, so we have a lot of brothers who are in construction. So what I'll do is I'll put another floor on top of this floor, and what I'll do is after constructing it, I will sell it to people. I will sell it to people. So now I have two portions in a building. One is going to be owned by others, and the other one is for the masjid. So is it permissible to use masjid as a building that way? So what scholars said that you cannot sell that house or that unit to others, because now you constructed it and now you're selling it. So it becomes part of a masjid, and you cannot sell any part of a masjid. However, if you can rent it, that is okay, that is permissible, but you cannot sell it. But however, like if that's not the case, like sometimes what happens is you buy a masjid with the intention that, okay, this place already has two floors. We're going to use the bottom floor for masjid, and the second floor we will probably sell it later on, but we'll not use it as a masjid. If you have this in mind since beginning, then it is okay. But once a masjid is established, you cannot change the definition of the units like that. Okay. And again, as I said, rental is okay, but the selling it is not permitted. We just are done with building the masjid. Now it's a time that we have to name the masjid, right? Are there any guidelines when it comes to naming a masjid? So definitely there are guidelines. Is it permissible to name a masjid? Yes, it is definitely permissible and should be named. And what are the permissible names? Now the first thing, as I mentioned before, that masjids, the masajids are the houses of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and the number one evidence we mentioned was in Surah Al-Jinn, wherein Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم وأن المساجد لله فلا تدعوا مع الله أحدا. And the mosques are for Allah, so invoke not anyone along with Allah. Masjid lillah, it's for Allah, so this belongs to Allah, right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, this masjid. So, but you're naming it, it doesn't mean that name that you're keeping, it sounds like it belongs to some other person. No, it still belongs to Allah, but it is okay. For example, can we keep the masjid's name after a prophet? Like, did Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam do that? Well, his own masjid, what is it called in Medina? Masjid al-Nabawi, right? So that is after a prophet, right? So Nabi's the prophet's mosque. So that is okay, and you can also name any permissible prophet name, like Masjid Isa ibn Maryam, Masjid Yusuf, whatever. So those are all permissible. And there are some do's and don'ts here. That's what I want to get into. You cannot keep certain names for a masjid. So what are those? First, what is permissible? Can we name after a location? Like this place is called Ronkonkoma Masjid, for example, or Suffolk Islamic Center. Is it permissible? This is permissible. What's the evidence? Or actually, one of the 4 masjids that we mentioned before, which masjid was named after a location? Masjid al-Quba and Masjid al-Aqsa also, right? Masjid al-Aqsa is actually a characteristic. It's not a location. Right? What does it mean? Aqsa? Aqsa means far away place, right? So it's a characteristic. So you can keep that name also as a characteristic. You know, like Masjid al-Haram is also a characteristic. Masjid Darul Quran, that's also like a characteristic. It's not a location or anything. So Masjid al-Quba, Quba is a place. That's why even during that time, Rasulullah they used to call it Masjid Quba. So location is okay. It's not a problem. Can we name after those who pray in it, like the people of Ronkonkoma, Suffolk Islamic Center, or the people, after a neighborhood or anything like that? This is all okay. Or the type of people, like for example, someone want to call themselves Ansar. Can we name it Masjid al-Ansar? We are the helpers in religion, so can we name that? Yes, that is okay. Now, can we name after certain people, specific people. So now we have like scholars, we have righteous people. Or what about, there was a person who long time ago donated a lot of money to this masjid and he passed away. Now we have that money and we want to build a masjid. So people say, that brother is like donated 70% of the funds. Why don't we keep the masjid's name after him? Because he is the one of the main person. Is it okay? Is it permissible? The scholars said that, yeah, it is mubah, it is permissible, but it doesn't mean that this masjid belongs to that person, okay? Who does it belong to? It belongs to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but for differentiating, this is okay. And during the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, it is mentioned in many hadith, if you look in Sahih Bukhari, wherein he would mention something like, when they would raise, they would mark the two places and they would say the masjid of Banu Ruzayq, for example, that's mentioned in Sahih Bukhari. So they would call a masjid by the tribe of that area, the people who used to live there. So Banu Ruzayq was one of the tribes living there. The don'ts is that, one of the don'ts is you should not name a masjid after the name of fasiq or a kafir person, right? Fasiq means a person who has transgressed, a person who is known for committing sins. Or even if a person is a good person but he is a kafir, right? So you cannot keep those names. So somebody like just can't keep like Masjid Michael Jackson, for example. You know that person, he's known for what he has done, and anything like that. Or someone who is a big fan of our president, Masjid Obama, right? You cannot do that. These things, because you cannot name after fasiq or kafir. There are some recommendations to it. So, but what about, can we name after a certain tribe when you're living among very many different people? For example, this masjid, for example, has a lot of brothers from Bangladesh. Can we name it Bengali Masjid? Is it okay? Is it permissible? The scholars mention that now this is a problem. This is a problem. The basic rules that they set is that the name should not be kept in such a way that it incites tribalism. Okay, so people would feel uncomfortable. People would feel like, okay, that's the masjid of Bengalis. I am not a Bengali, so he would not feel okay. So he would feel like a second-class citizen in that masjid. Okay, so that should not incite any tribalism. But you have to look at the context. You can, for example, go in India, for example, and you have a lot of money. Can you name there Bengali Masjid? Well, in that place there are no Bengalis, but you're keeping that name Bengali Masjid because maybe a Bengali brother donated, so nobody would feel discomfortable. But when living in this area, that would be a problem. People will have a tribalism, sense of tribalism. And during the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, you'll be surprised that this happened. During that time, Muhajir and Ansar, as you know, they would compete in good things. They would compete in good things. And one time, some people, they were not really well grounded in the knowledge of Islam, and they were inciting tribalism, and they would, accidentally someone hit the other, so this person started saying, "Oh, Ansars, where are you?" And the Muhajirs, that person was a Muhajir, another person, he said, "Oh, Muhajirs, where are you?" So Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam heard this. Who is saying this? Ansar, Muhajir. So he was told that, there was a fight that was going on. A person hit another person, so that's why they're calling each other's group. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam got upset. He said, "What is this call of Jahiliyyah?" He said that, "Stay away from this. This is disgusting. This is disgusting." Because now you see the tribalism coming in there. A group, Muhajir and Ansar, they're forming groups. That's the point. You have to break it off. So you have to be very careful with these things when it comes to naming a masjid. Okay, this is another sensitive topic that many people have issues with. When you are constructing a masjid, some people say that let's build dome, let's build minarets for the masjid that we are having. Now, is it permissible to have domes and minarets? And can we have a mihrab in the masjid also? and what do we learn from Sirah. So when the scholars, they talked about it, they mentioned that with some exceptions, with even in some specific situations, this might be permissible, but generally speaking, domes and minarets, they are not at all required. It is not at all necessary for a masjid to have domes and minarets. But if it is, they said, if it is serving a particular purpose, some valid purpose, then it is okay. Otherwise, it is not. So what are those permissible purposes? So if you look, a dome, right? A dome like this dome. Generally, people want to build dome. The number one reason why they build dome is because it lets the light come in and the air comes in. It's like a structure that can help you with that light and air. So that is a possible reason that they said. And minarets, they said that minarets, these were historically used for giving adhan. People would just go over the minaret and entire city would be able to hear after climbing over the minarets. Okay, and also it's a recognition of the masjid. People from far away who will be traveling, they would see it's a minaret and they would know that this is a place of worship. This is a masjid, and so we can go there and pray. So that's the only possible exceptions that they give. They said that it is not something that is, should be used for decoration or for, you cannot like make it very extravagant, very expensive. That is not permissible. During the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, was there any dome or was there any minarets? No, there was no. What about during the time of Khulafa? There was no domes and minarets in Masjid al-Nabawi also. And I'm going to discuss this issue in more detail. Why do we have right now in Masjid al-Nabawi the domes and minarets, and why don't we remove it, or what's the purpose of it, and so on. This is a very sensitive topic actually. I think I wanted to go into more detail, but we don't have much time. But generally speaking, you shouldn't be using domes and minarets for decoration or for, as just like a style for a masjid. Okay, there has to be some specific purpose to it. And another thing is the mihrab, like this mihrab, right? This mihrab is a place, for example, our masjid has a mihrab. Mihrab is a place where the imam stands and prays, offers his salah, and he leads the prayer, and also a place probably where he gives the khutbah from. Is it permissible to have mihrab like that? So the scholars said that this is permissible, this is okay, because there is a purpose for a mihrab. The purpose is that it helps people know that this is a masjid. If I get someone from outside, some Muslim brother who just came from outside country, and bring him into this place without him telling that this is a masjid, he would look at this place in the mihrab and say, oh, this looks like a masjid, right? Some places just have plain carpet, so they don't have the saf and rows and all these things. So this helps a person know that this is a masjid, okay? And also, for a newcomer who's a traveler, it tells him where the direction of Qibla is, right? So it helps. So these are the reasons. So it's not something which is intrinsic to the masjid. You must have minarets. No, there is no such rule. But if it serves a purpose, then it is okay. Okay, and similar things, you cannot have extravagance in the masjid. Okay, you cannot buy like a $50,000 chandelier and having a minaret which was like done in the state of the art, so people would come and take the pictures and video because it's so cool and so forth. So this is not permitted. And what's the evidence? Why do we say that? Because we have a hadith from Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. This is in Abu Dawud and this is graded Sahih. In Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said that you are going to adorn the masjids as the Jews and Christians adorn their places of worship, right? And if you also look into the history, Umar radiallahu anhu, during his time, there was a lot of rain, and the masjid's construction, the roof and everything, there was a need to rebuild the masjid. So what he did was, he told people that rebuild the masjid, but make sure do not use red or yellow color. Red or yellow color. Why did he say that? because at that time it was used for adornment, okay, used for decoration. And his point was, these kind of things, it distracts people from worshiping, right? So people would come and, instead of praying, they would be just thinking about the great architecture of this place, beautiful painting and beautiful images, or the, whatever the architecture you have in the wall and the minaret. So all these things are basically distraction. And during the time of Khulafa radiallahu anhum, they followed the same examples. Any distraction, they are away from it. And they kept everything simple, okay? They kept everything simple. And Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, I think you also know that hadith wherein he mentioned that decorating of a masjid is what? Is a sign of what? Sign of the day of judgment, right? This is a sign. So people, that's why you see even today people are getting more and more into the decoration and the masajids itself. They are spending so much money on decorating part instead of expanding the masjid. They are spending too much time on decorating it and making it look beautiful. All they want is people should come and they say, oh, what a beautiful management job they have done here, that it's so great, and all masjids should follow this example. That's what they want, but that's not the thing. Yes, masjid needs to be kept clean. It's very important, but it is not something that you spend a lot of effort on, the money. And the biggest problem is any money you spend on the masjid, it's sadaqah jariyah, right? And if you are giving money for decoration of a masjid, then it does not count under sadaqah jariyah. It's plain and clear. Okay, that is not the money that sadaqah jariyah applies. So you have to be careful where that money is being used. So as a volunteer of the masjid, you should know all these things and raise your concerns. So inshallah we will stop here, and we'll talk more about the minarets and the domes of Masjid an-Nabawi inshallah next time, and why do we have there, and what's the history behind it, who really constructed it, and so on. Yes, brother.